Good evening, Rowan. It's the 11th of December 2016 and it's about 8:15. And obviously this is my usual Sunday evening video to reassure you that I haven't been seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. Of course, I have been smashing down my neighbour's door, and you will have seen the videos about that. So I hope you've got the message now, Rowan, that I don't put up with people abusing me, and so I'm not going to make the life easy of anyone who treats me in an abusive way, and I've demonstrated that over and over again throughout my adult life. And I've demonstrated it particularly in relation to you and David Pete. So this is how it is. I am certainly not going to make the life easy of anyone who abuses me or tries to abuse me. And I'd also like to send a message here to those psychiatric scumbags who made up a pack of lies about me. I want to tell you that I was perfectly alright living here until these arseholes moved in to harass me continually. People harass me continually night and day, and I've now got pains in my chest again with stress from when these fucking cunts moved in next door to me. So this is what is causing this. It's not because I want to be a fucking nun. It's not because somebody was rude to me when I was 3 years old. It's because of this abusive situation that I'm in right now. And you are a bunch of stuck up, arrogant, patronising, incompetent, deluded, middle-class twats. You live in the leafy suburbs in detached houses. You've never even had a bad neighbour, never mind anything else. And you look down your condescending noses at me and think you're going to cure me of my problems, when the reality is you're exactly the same as Rowan Williams. You cause the problem and then you pretend to save me from it. You pieces of shit, every single one of you. And these people are not helping me. All this bullshit head messing crap is not helping me. I didn't need any help. I needed people to stop abusing me, and instead you've all poured nearly 10 years of my life down the fucking drain, and you've traumatised me so badly I'm never going to recover. And this, I don't even have words for it. I'm so angry with you. You just ruin and spoil everything. You've taken everything away from me. I've got nothing. I've got nobody. And you've still got these fucking cunts causing me chest pains with the fucking stress of it. So you listen to me, psychiatrists. You're going to jail for all the fucking lies you told about me, the shit that you made up. You see, because the problem is with professional people like you, you've got a professional interest to protect. And if somebody says to you, I'm upset because these people are harassing me, and anyone with any ordinary intelligence could figure out that this situation would be immensely stressful. Any person with ordinary intelligence could figure that out without a problem. Well, you don't want that, do you? You want there to be some great mystery about it so you can justify your undeserved professional status as experts, because you're experts in nothing. You might as well be alchemists. You're experts in nothing. So if you were just to accept the most obvious explanation, like, oh yes, she's stressed because all these people are harassing her, then you couldn't justify your gigantic salaries, which you get paid for talking shite, kidnapping and falsely imprisoning people, could you? So don't experience for me a moment's discomfort, will you, thinking about how terrible it must be to be in the situation you've all deliberately put me in. Oh no, why don't you make up a pack of lies exactly the same as Rowan Williams did? Why don't you go around and spread those lies behind my back exactly the same as Rowan Williams did? Why do you not even tell me what you're thinking, just lie your bastard faces off about me behind my back, exactly the same as Rowan Williams did. And why don't you pretend you're curing me of some problem that you've totally invented, exactly the same as Rowan Williams did? And why don't you try and drive me to suicide, exactly the same as Rowan Williams did? So you're all the fucking same. So that's what I've got to say to psychiatrists, and this is what I've got to say to you, Rowan Williams, because when I was trying to demonstrate that I had the competence and the vocation to be a priest in the Church of England, which I clearly did, and you had to lie to say that I didn't, because if I didn't, you could have told the truth then, and that would have demonstrated that I didn't, wouldn't it? But you couldn't tell the truth and demonstrate that I didn't have a vocation to be a priest in the Church of England, so you made up a pack of lies. But while I was going through all of that, people pretending to be helping me and testing my vocation, when the only intention was to stab me in the back, to try and destroy me and destroy my faith, which is what you were doing, and using trauma-based mind control techniques, Rowan Williams. While I was going through all of that, I was a volunteer in a prison chaplaincy, and I was leading a Bible study group. So I did find out a reasonable amount about what life's like in prison from the women who were in the prison, the prisoners I mean, who I have to say treated me a lot more politely and courteously than about half the Anglican clergy I've come across in my life. I found them far more pleasant, polite people. They treated me in a very respectful way, which is more than can be said, as I've said, for the arrogant, stuck-up, middle-class Anglican clergy that I came across, who just wanted to act like arseholes a lot of the time and be obnoxious and rude to me. So that was my experience of the women who were in the prison. They were very polite to me and intelligent and really enthusiastic about participating in the Bible study group, and they really liked to talk about stories in the Bible where people had been in prison, like Joseph in the Old Testament and St. Paul and things like that. And they also just like to talk about life in general and how they happen to be in prison. So I did learn a reasonable amount about what life's like in prison while I was doing this Bible study group there. So I'd just like to tell you one piece of information about that, Rowan, so you know what you've got to look forward to when you be spending the rest of your life in prison. So a lot of people who get taken into prison, they get taken in because of crimes they've committed in relation to drug abuse. For example, if someone's a heroin addict and they really need heroin, they feel that they need heroin to feed this addiction, they tend to get into a lot of petty crime like shoplifting and burgling and that kind of thing, and pickpocketing. And as a result of that, quite a lot of them end up in prison because of these crimes around drug addiction rather than things related directly to the drugs. So what they do is the person goes to prison who's high on heroin, usually because they've just, had a hit, they've got arrested for shoplifting or something like that, and then they get remanded in prison. Well, they haven't got any heroin when they're first remanded in prison, so they come off the heroin cold turkey. And the thing about opiates is, they make everything relax in your body, like all your muscles relax. And if you're dependent on this for your muscles relaxing in your body, then that gives you a feeling of being okay. But when you take the opiate away, what happens then is all the muscles that had been relaxed by this opiate, they start contracting. So this causes agonising pain to the addict. It's not life-threatening, although it can feel like that to the person. And so what happens is, you see, they're taken into prison, they haven't got any heroin, and there's no possibility of seeing a doctor for getting any painkillers or any substitute to get them through the worst part of withdrawing from heroin. So what they do is they scream all night long and they keep everybody awake. So just think about that, Rowan. all this screaming all night and keeping me awake and all this kind of thing that's been going on for years now. For 12 years they've been doing this to me. And you were getting people to do that to me for 4 years before that, although not continuously. So you think about that, Rowan, all that you've put me through, and you're going to be locked up in prison with heroin addicts screaming all night long and keeping you awake. So I hope they take a lot of them in and put them in the cell next door to you. So that's what I want to say about my noisy neighbours in relation to you. You look forward to the heroin addicts screaming all night.
My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God my Saviour, for he has looked with favour on his lowly servant. From this day all generations will call me blessed. The Almighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. He has mercy on those who fear him in every generation. He has shown the strength of his arm. He has scattered the proud in their conceit. He has cast down the mighty from their thrones, and has lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has come to the help of his servant Israel, for he has remembered his promise of mercy, the promise he made to our fathers, to Abraham and his children forever.
Right, so on that cheery note then, I'll continue with my comments on the lecture that you gave on the 21st of November 2016, when you were talking about Mary, the mother of Jesus, allegedly, but as usual, you were using the opportunity to try and get your leg over once again. Partly to feed your narcissistic and grandiose delusions. But also to try and save your skin, obviously, now, although that couldn't have been the case right at the beginning when you started all this crap. So, anyway, oh, by the way, the picture that we're looking at now of your beautiful face once again was taken in Salisbury Cathedral on Friday evening, the 9th of December, 2016. So, have you finally cottoned on that everyone realises what a complete and utter gobshite you are, and what a sleazy, disgusting pervert you are? I mean, after my last video where I was drawing attention to the fact that you were talking about snuggling under the duvet with a rocket scientist. So, yeah, so that was Friday evening. So, anyway, so I'm going to talk about this lecture now. You've just heard somebody reading the Magnificat, which is the song that Mary sang when she went to see her cousin Elizabeth, just after the angel had announced to her that she was going to become pregnant and have Jesus then. So that was the song, and you do refer to that, which is why I've just shown this short film now to set the scene. So then you say, and it's not entirely surprising then that Mary goes to visit her cousin Elizabeth later in Luke's story. The song she sings is a story about God turning things upside down. He has put down the powerful, he has lifted up the humble, he has sent the rich away hungry, and he has filled the hungry with good things. Mary has encountered things, but the catch is that this is a God who changes things by changing her. God is certainly going to bring in his kingdom, but she is really involved. So when you say God is certainly going to bring in his kingdom, I can't help thinking you're talking about the New World Order. And by God, I think you mean you or the Luciferian cabal that you're involved in. And also this, Mary has encountered things, but the catch is that this is a God who changes things by changing her. Well, I already commented on this a little bit in my last video, where you were saying that there was something wrong with the artwork, basically, that portrayed Mary in this scene as looking very pious already, as if she was already pious. And I said I thought this was a further demonstration I'm not sure if I specifically said this, but it was what I was thinking of. Another demonstration that you don't view people as having any inherent character, and that actually when Mary responded in the way that she did to the angel, I'm commenting on this where you're saying that God who changes things by changing her, that it was part of her character already that she would respond to the angel in this kind of way, that she would want to do God's will, and God was asking this of her and she agreed to that. So this was part of her inherent character. So I'm not too sure again that you're talking about Mary here, and you tend to identify yourself with God and with Christ and with various prominent historical figures and Christian figures like saints and Gideon in the Old Testament, as I mentioned in the last video. So I think here, when you're saying here that the catch is that this is a God who changes things by changing her, I think you're God here, and you think that I'm going to want you to change things by becoming changed myself. And of course, the little video that I play at the end of all my videos begins with part of a song which says, "Don't try to change me, you're wasting your time." So I think you're telling me here either that you're God and you're going to change things by changing me, or that I should change because this is what God wants. I shouldn't insist on not changing. So nice try once again, Rowan, but don't waste your breath. So God is certainly going to bring in his kingdom, but she is really involved. You sound very confident and you're insisting on this. God is certainly going to bring in his kingdom, but she is really involved. You're really hilarious. Like you've got any control over the situation. You're just gaslighting and trying to present yourself as really being in control of everything, when the reality is that you're totally impotent in every sense of the word. So you then say, a real human being with a real human response. And it's not in the least bit surprising that her first human response is panic and incomprehension. Right, so I've just changed the slide now so that we can look at the passage that you're referring to and see how much you're embellishing it. So it's not in the least bit surprising that her first human response is panic and incomprehension. "What are you talking about?" she says to the angel. "What on earth can this mean? I'm not married, and in case you hadn't noticed, I'm a peasant teenager in a traditional Middle Eastern society," or words to that effect. Well, she does ask the angel, "How can this happen? Because I'm a virgin. So how can I conceive a child because of that?" But that's as close as it gets to what you say that she says. "I'm not married." I suppose that could be the equivalent of "I'm a virgin," but that's as good as it gets, really. So you do really like to embellish things, don't you? I talked about this in the last video as well. You pretend you're providing some profound insight into the Bible. You do this in relation to other areas of life as well, but I'm talking about the Bible here, things that you're saying about things in the Bible. So you're pretending that you're giving some great exegesis and you're explaining this better to people so that they're going to really understand what's said in the Bible even better. But in fact, you're just embellishing it, you're making it up. So she doesn't really say any words to that effect. So you then say, "She can't see how this is going to work." You've got a strange tone of voice on. It's because I outed you the day before as obsessing about me being a lesbian because you got into a jealous rage if I showed any romantic interest in another man. I did this by showing a clip of a porn star talking about the kind of men who watch lesbian pornography and how some of them form fantasy relationships with an actress in the lesbian porn films, and then they get in a jealous rage if they see her later on in a film only with a male. This time, and send a hate mail and all kinds of things. So I showed this clip the day before, and you're chronically embarrassed. You're chronically embarrassed by the fact you've been outed, and I've explained your behaviour. I've known this for a long time, Rowan. Well, when I say a long time, I'd say just over a year, when you were quoting Sisters of Mercy lyrics to me in an article that you wrote about Brother Roger of Taizé, which is on the Taizé website. That was one occasion last summer around September time that article appeared, and also you did the same thing, you quoted the same lyrics in one of the videos which were about the Desert Fathers, which I've already commented on both of these things before, and that was about August last year. So about August, September time, you were quoting this song to me, First and Last and Always, and I've mentioned this before, first and last and always, to the end of time, first and last and always mine. And that was the first time I realised what this had been all about, that you were affronted because you couldn't get your leg over. And everything fell into place then, and I realised you were obsessed about me being a lesbian because you couldn't handle the fact that I'd rejected you, and this was the only explanation that you'd tolerate for that, and this is why you had to make up stories about me being a prostitute if I ever showed any romantic interest in other men. So this is why I think you sound so affronted in this video. Because I've outed you, really, and showed that you're just a stalker, really. You're a sexual predator, you're a stalker, and this is what's been behind all of your behaviour. Around sexual matters, I mean, I think you would have tried to ruin me anyway because you felt threatened by me, in a professional sense, I mean. But as I said, you could have made up other stories about me, and you chose sex because you're obsessed with sex. So this is the reason why I think you sounded so affronted that I put this video out the day before you giving this lecture. So anyway, you say she can't see how this is going to work, and you emphasise work. So it's all about my incomprehension, I think this is, you know. I'm not responding to your fantastic, generous offers to screw me, because you're the Lord and Master, aren't you? And as you were telling me in the last video, you know, I was just a neglected peasant, whatever it was. I can't remember. I was just a neglected peasant and an unmarried woman and not part of any man's family, although of course I'm part of a man's family because I had a father, unlike you, who had a father who was absent and present at the same time, which is worse than being entirely absent because he was reinforcing to you every day by being there and not being there, but that he just couldn't be bothered with you. So I was part of a man's family because I had a father. So you're trying to make me feel, I think, like I'm somehow inadequate because I'm an unmarried woman, and I ought to be flattered at your interest in me because you're the Lord and the Master. You know, you're in the House of Lords and you're the Master of Magdalen College and you're chosen by God and you are God and all these kind of things, and you just can't understand why your generous offer to screw me isn't filling me with delight. This is because you're a lunatic. So anyway, she can't see how this is going to work. And the angel simply says, well, All I can tell you is that it is going to work. Well, that's not exactly what the angel says, is it? And the offer stands. So your offer to screw me still stands then, Rowan. Well, I can't tell you how thrilled I am about that. But my offer to kick you in the balls still stands, so don't forget to tip me the wink about that. So you then say, like the prophet Isaiah says, this is Isaiah speaking in chapter 6 of the book of the prophet Isaiah, which I read this passage in the last video. So God asks Isaiah, whom shall I send? And Isaiah replies, here I am. Literally, behold me. This is what you're saying. Like the prophet Isaiah says, here I am. Literally, behold me. In Hebrew, Hineni. So that is actually correct Hebrew there. So congratulations on that. But I don't really want to behold you, Rowan, unless you've put that bag over your head like I suggested the other day. Here I am, here I am. You repeat that. So you've said here I am 3 times now in English and once in Hebrew. And behold me. So she puts herself, her choices, her energy. So we're back on this emphasis of the word energy again. This is because I said that the energy behind David Pete's continually harassing behaviour I believe to be satanic. So I mentioned this recently in a video about capitalism, that you described capitalism as having energy, and I said I thought that was because you wanted me to view capitalism as being demonic. And you've also done this many times in the past. You've attributed energy to God and to various saints and prominent figures in Christian history, and you're trying to convince me by this, I think, that energy comes from God, and therefore I should regard David Pete as being godly rather than a psychopathic pervert like you. So her choices, her energy. So David Pete is like Mary, the mother of Jesus, I think he's saying here. Her decision, her love and her patience at the disposal of God. Well, that's all very well, but of course you're God, aren't you? So we all have to bear that in mind when interpreting what you say, that in Rowan Williams' world, Rowan Williams is God. So you then say, and that's how she's going to make a difference, by trust, by confidence in what she doesn't yet grasp or understand. So if we think about the significance of the figure of Mary for ourselves today, that's one thing which we might well ponder. The problem is, you see, by trust, by confidence in what she doesn't yet grasp or understand. But the thing is, Rowan, you see, I don't trust you because I know you're a lying, conniving scumbag. So I don't trust you, and I'll never trust you because you never tell the truth about anything. By confidence in what she doesn't yet grasp or understand. Oh, but the thing is, Rowan, you see, I do grasp it and understand it. So that's the problem you've got, really. You want me not to grasp it and understand it so that I'll be daft enough to go along with you and say you're wonderful and all this kind of thing, like a lot of daft people have done in the past. But the problem is I do grasp it or understand it, and that's why I don't want anything to do with you. So you then say, so if we think about the significance of the figure of Mary for ourselves today, that's one thing which we might well ponder. Here is somebody who reminds us that God tends to start working in very unlikely places. So you emphasise that. Well, it depends what you mean by unlikely places, doesn't it? Because the Christian understanding is that God does work in very unlikely places, often, because he doesn't regard social status or power or wealth or anything like that. So the people who might be high profile in society have high status in society, like the Archbishop of Canterbury, for example, are not necessarily the people who God works most fully through. So, and maybe like a president or something like that is a very powerful person. And then, of course, you look at the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, they're very powerful people, but God doesn't regard earthly power in this way. He's not impressed by worldly power. He sees the heart of the person, the soul of the person, and the thing that impresses God, if you want to put it that way, is a person's virtue and willingness to abide by the will of God. So God tends to start working in very unlikely places. Well, yes, in that sense. But if you mean in the sense of working through the actions of perverted psychopaths, then no, he doesn't really. It's not God's will that you act in this disgusting, perverted, lying way. So God isn't working in very unlikely places in that sense. And this also reminds me actually of one of David Peate's sermons. He was very creepy, just like you, making these suggestive comments all the time and staring at me, and that was why I used to go out and stand in the porch of the church. I did that for 18 months every single time he preached, because I was just sick of the filth, really. But I remember one sermon before I started doing this, where he was talking about the Christian community, and he was always into this collectivist bullshit as well, that it was always about community and people intermingling and interpenetrating, he said. And he also said that God worked in unlikely places and you would find God in the sordid. That's what he said. So it doesn't mean God is present everywhere, obviously, even in sordid places, but that doesn't mean that it's the way he wants human beings to be behaving or to be involved in those things. So that's not the same thing. And he also, I remember him quoting Julian of Norwich, where her revelation of divine love, where I think she'd asked God about the problem of evil or something, or God was communicating something about this to her, and she saw that God didn't want evil, or that he didn't create evil, but that he permitted it. And so what she meant, I think, by he permits it, in that he doesn't obliterate it immediately. I mean, this is my words now, he's redeemed the world through Christ, through the death of Christ, and defeated death by the resurrection. But evil is still permitted to continue until Judgment Day, until these things are resolved in the last judgment. So I think this is what she was talking about, he permits it. But the way that David Peate presented this was that God was permissive. God doesn't want evil, but he permits it. So he lets me do it. That was what he was implying in what he was saying there. So this is the reason why I never wanted to listen to David Peate's sermons. He was always sniping at me and things I was doing in the church, like running the young people's activities and taking them away to a Christian community in France. I did that, and he was always sniping about that because he was very jealous about it, because he wasn't doing anything about that. So this is why I didn't listen to his sermons, because of all this filth and suggestive comments, staring at me, sniping at me, and making statements like this, that God tends to start working in very unlikely places. Well, yes, among the powerless, for example, but no, not in sordid people who insist on going their own way. So you then say, a surprising number of the saints are very unlikely candidates. You emphasise that. They're very unlikely candidates for sanctity if you look at them as their whole lives develop. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute, because you then say some of them are people with very murky pasts. Yes, that's true, Rowan, but the problem with you is not that you've got a murky past, it's that you've got a murky present. You see, the thing with saints who've got a murky past is that they've responded to the invitation of Christ. They've turned to Christ and repented of their sins, and then they've gone on to live a life of holiness. So when you say a surprising number of the saints are very unlikely candidates for sanctity if you look at them as their whole lives develop, well, that isn't true. You've turned the thing upside down. They're very unlikely candidates for sanctity if you look at their early lives. You do mention a saint in relation to this later on, so I won't say any more about that now. But they might be very unlikely candidates for sanctity looking at their early lives, but the way their lives developed, it took them on the path of holiness and virtue after responding to Christ's invitation. So you've tipped it on its head. A surprising number of the saints are very unlikely candidates for sanctity if you look at them as their whole lives develop. No, you've got that the wrong way around. So you say some of them are people with very murky pasts, some of them are people with dreadful temperaments, people you would not want to go on a long car journey with. You know the old saying that the martyrs are the people who have to live with the saints. Well, I think you're having a snipe at me here, to be honest. I haven't got a dreadful temperament, Rowan. I've got a very peaceful temperament, but I have been systematically tortured night and day for 8 years now, and they're just escalating it now. They've escalated it in recent weeks. And how exactly do you expect me to respond to that? Do you think I'm sitting on a cloud playing a fucking harp, or what do you think I'm doing? How do you expect me to respond to that? So if people treat me in a decent way, then I treat them in a decent way. But if people are going to systematically abuse me, then I'm not going to make it easy for those bastards to abuse me. So I haven't got anywhere at all to turn. I haven't got anybody to help me at all. Every single person is involved in this conspiracy that's going on behind my back to make my life complete and utter hell and harass me and control everything. You see, I can't even move out of here and move somewhere else to get away from these people because they'll just move some other scumbags in next door to me again. Wherever I go, I can't go anywhere to get away from this constant abuse and harassment. So I haven't got a dreadful temperament, Rowan. I've got a very peaceful temperament. I'm a very peaceful and gentle person when people are not systematically abusing me. And as for people you would not want to go on a long car journey with, you wouldn't even want to stand at the bus stop with me for 1 minute. Never mind go on a long car journey with me. Because I'll tell you, you've seen how I've dealt with these people who are abusing me, and I'm making these videos about you, and I've stood up to you, I've stood up to David Pete, and stood up to all the people who've just shit on me in the Anglican Church year after year after year. I've stood up to all these people, and you wouldn't want to be with me for a minute. And that's not because of my temperament, it's because of your filthy, disgusting, sadistic behaviour. So if you don't like my temperament, I don't give a fuck. But just bear this in mind, that people who treat me well, I treat them well as well. And I even treat people well who don't treat me well, as long as they're not systematically abusing me. If they're just in a bad temper or selfish or something because of some bad life experience that they've had. I've treated a lot of people very well who are quite frankly a pain in the fucking ass, and I'd probably rather have crossed the street to avoid them. So I haven't got a dreadful temperament. I'm also a very generous person, as well as being very peace-loving and gentle. But don't think that you can force your fucking filthy, perverted agenda on me, and I'm not going to react to that in any way at all. Because you just better run for cover. That's all I can say. I've just discovered that YouTube has implemented, without notice, a 1 hour limit on editing videos on their channel. And since I've only got my mobile phone to work on that, and I didn't even have the software anyway on my computer, which now doesn't work anymore, I've had to edit a part out of this video, which I will publish tomorrow instead. So I'll leave it there for this evening, but don't worry, there's plenty more crap you've been talking, which I'm going to upload tomorrow to finish off this talk that you gave at Crib Fest or whatever it was called. And obviously I want to be spending all night dreaming of my beloved and trying to get over the stress of all the harassing, abusive bastards I have to deal with on account of the fact that you're satanic filth, Rowan. So I will leave it there, but don't forget to be alert, because I will be turning up to arrest you, and obviously I will be kicking you in the balls as well if you tip me the wink, but I won't be taking any clothes off for the bishop, who's you obviously, even though you're completely null and utterly void, to give me his cloak as a temporary measure. So that's a teaser for tomorrow's video. Hasta mañana.
And it's not entirely surprising, then, that when Mary goes on to visit her cousin Elizabeth later in Luke's story, the song she sings is a story about God turning things upside down. He has put down the powerful. He has lifted up the humble. He has sent the rich away hungry, and he has filled the hungry with good things. Mary has encountered a God who changes things. But the catch is that this is a God who changes things by changing her. God is certainly going to bring in his kingdom, but she is really involved. A real human being with a real human response. And it's not in the least bit surprising that her first human response is panic and incomprehension. "What are you talking about?" she says to the angel. "What on earth can this mean? I'm not married, and in case you hadn't noticed, I'm a peasant teenager in a traditional Middle Eastern society," or words to that effect. She can't see how this is going to work. And the angel simply says, "Well, all I can tell you is that it is going to work," and the offer stands. And Mary, like the prophet Isaiah, says, "Here am I," literally, "behold me," in Hebrew, hineni, here I am, here I am. So she puts herself, her choices, her energy, her decision, her love and her patience at the disposal of God. And that's how she's going to make a difference. By trust, by confidence in what she doesn't yet grasp or understand. So if we think about the significance of the figure of Mary for ourselves today, that's one thing which we might very well ponder. Here is somebody who reminds us that God tends to start working in very unlikely places. A surprising number of the saints are very unlikely candidates for sanctity, if you look at them as their whole lives develop. Some of them are people with very murky pasts. Some of them are people with dreadful temperaments, people you really would not want to go on a long car journey with. You know the old saying that the martyrs are the people who have to live with the saints. And yet...
Can't you hear the thunder? You better run, you better take cover.
have the best sex.
Adelante.